Good evening. Make sure we're recording. Okay, we're good. Good evening. Welcome to the Monday, March 3rd, 2025 Dalton City Council meeting. A quorum is present. Mr. Lama, will you please lead us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Council members, you have before you the agenda. At this time, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, at this time, we would invite anyone public commentary. If there's anyone that wants to speak, this would be the appropriate time to do so. Okay, seeing no one moving towards the microphone, we will move on to presentations, staff reports, department heads.
Madam Mayor, Chief Daniel has a presentation.
Okay.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Council. First of all, thanks for the opportunity to speak. First of all, I must apologize to Deputy Chief Russell because I had to somewhat mislead him to have him here on his final mayor and council meeting. And I'll try to ignore his gaze from afar. But for those of you who are unfamiliar with Chief Russell, he's someone that does not seek recognition. He is truly one of the best men I've had the opportunity to work for and with. After more than 40 years of service, with 32 years of those being at the Dalton Fire Department, Deputy Chief Russell will retire from the Dalton Fire Department on March the 14th, promptly at 1400 hours at his request, of course. I apologize. So promptly at 1400 hours at his request, of course, but that's because it's his last day and it is a Friday. Deputy Chief Russell has been a cornerstone of the fire department, dedicating countless years of service, ensuring the safety and well-being of our community. His unwavering commitment, exceptional leadership, and vision have shaped the direction of the fire department for years to come, leaving an indelible legacy that will guide us forever. I am deeply grateful for his tireless dedication and the example he has set forth for all of us. Through his hard work, passion, and professionalism, Deputy Chief Russell has truly exemplified what it means to serve with honor. Please join me in thanking Deputy Chief Russell for his extraordinary service and wishing him the best on his new chapter in his life. Thank you, sir.
Chief Russell, do you want to say anything or just wait and talk to Chief Daniel after? Okay. Okay. Thank you, Chief Daniel, for recognizing Chief Russell. I know that I can say as a member of the Public Safety Commission and as a member of this council, we are very appreciative to your service, and we hope that you're going to now have the time to do all the things you enjoy most. And I would imagine some hunting trips are probably lined up to go and take. So thank you, and you can still come first and third Mondays of the month if you want to. Anybody else? Please feel free to say anything. We all really appreciate you. All right. Council members, you have before you minutes of the mayor and council meeting of February the 17th. This time I'll entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Under new business, item number 3 will be the review of 3 alcohol applications. Jesse?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. Can you all hear me well? Before you, we have 3 alcohol applications for your consideration. The first one being business owner El Ranchito Mexican Restaurant LLC, doing business as El Ranchito Mexican Restaurant. The applicant's name is Gerardo Mendiola Flores. The physical address is going to be 101 West Walnut Avenue, Suite 19. The type of license is being applied for pouring beer, wine, and liquor. This is for a restaurant. There are no staff comments, and the Public Safety Commission gave it an approval recommendation as well.
Council members, do you have any questions of Jesse? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay,
Thank you. The second one's going to be business owner Rosa Negra LLC, doing business as Rosa Negra Lounge. The applicant's name is Manuel Alex Vital. The physical address is going to be 323 North Hamilton Street. The type of license being applied for are pouring beer and liquor for a bar. There is a letter from the police department in your packet as well, if you wish to read that as well. And the PSC gave it a denial recommendation as well. If you guys have any questions, can ask Mr. Jonathan Blesso to explain the reason behind that.
Jonathan, do you care at this time to expand on the denial recommendation?
I'm happy to, Mayor. The denial recommendation comes pursuant to Section 6107 of the Alcohol Code, which provides that an applicant who has violated any law, regulation, or ordinance relating to such business or has surrendered its license with a charge pending related to the violation of any law, regulation, or ordinance relating to that business within a 36-month period immediately preceding the date of the application. Under those circumstances, that individual would be disqualified. And that is the case here. As you all may recall, there were some charges that were pending for Rosa Negra and Taboo in October. Those charges, we had a hearing in front of the Public Safety Commission. In the Public Safety Commission, the owner of those businesses admitted to the violations and then later surrendered the license before it came to the council to be decided on. And so that fits right within this section of a disqualification.
Are there any further questions of Jonathan or any comments or questions directed to Jesse?
Can we take both of these up at the same time, or they need to be?
No, do them separately.
Okay.
Do you have a motion to disapprove?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of denial?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. That application is denied.
Thank you. The last one's going to be business owner Deja Vu Social Club LLC, doing business as Deja Vu Social Club. The applicant's Manuel Alex Vital. The physical address is 224 North Hamilton Street. The type of license is being applied for pouring beer and liquor for a bar as well. And then the Public Safety Commission recommendation also came back as denial.
Jonathan?
And this is the same owner and same reason.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion for denial?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor of a denial?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, item is denied. Do you have any others, Jesse?
That's all. Thank
Okay.
you, Mayor.
Next item is going to be number 4, demolition agreement and easement for signage at 1505 West Walnut Avenue. Dan?
Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council. Just a little background on this case. In May of 2023, the Code Enforcement Unit began addressing potential code violations regarding signs in the West Walnut Avenue corridor. You may recall that summer we tore down several signs with the permission of the property owner with demolition agreements. We have one sign remaining out of that group of investigations, and that would be the 1505 West Walnut Avenue. We commonly refer to that as the old Pizza Hut sign. The things that we were looking for with these signs were deterioration and abandonment of the signs. This particular sign fits that criteria to be out of compliance with the current ordinances. The current owner of the property has signed a demolition agreement. As part of that agreement, they will reimburse the city any cost. The size of this sign will not require renting out a crane or anything. And as far as the materials, there'll be no tipping fees at the landfill due to being recyclable materials. And the cost of the title work is about $350, and they have agreed to repay the city for that. And with that in mind, we are seeking approval to move forward with the demolition.
Okay, are there any questions of Dan?
Motion to approve.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, thank you. All right. Item number 5. Can everyone hear us okay? Seems like sound is really low. Okay. Item number 5, resolution 2502-02, authorizing municipal property and disposition.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. This resolution, as you've described, authorizes the public auction of an easement area on Raisin Way to facilitate construction of a new cell tower on adjacent privately owned property. So if you will refer to the small graphic on the side of the screen, the city owns the property north of the dark line running east and west. The property owner, the McDonald Family Trust, has entered into an agreement for leasing of their property for a Verizon cell phone tower. The city owns the property to the north, and there's an existing driveway called Raisin Way that serves the Saul Raisin Bike Park as well as the city's former inert landfill, and where today we store wooded debris for mulching from city pickup. And so since the existing driveway was already there and adjoined the private property to the south, the owners have petitioned the city to grant an easement across the first 800 feet or so of the driveway to access the site to avoid having to build a new driveway into Pleasant Grove Drive. There are some terrain and environmental concerns about building a new driveway due to topography. So what's up for consideration is this would be a temporary non-exclusive easement, which means that the easement will run with as long as the tower is in operation. If they ever quit using the tower, the easement would sunset. It's also non-exclusive because the city would continue to use it to access the inert landfill site as well as users of the bike park. As I said, it's about 30 feet wide and 800 feet long. I think it's about 24,000 square feet of easement area from Pleasant Grove Drive up to the entrance of the cell tower site. Per Georgia law, we did have to appraise the value of the property. The value of the easement was determined to be $4,800 based on the anticipated split of usage of the driveway. As I said earlier, if the tower ever ceases to exist or operate, then the easement would sunset. Verizon did tell us that they are building this tower as a result of their users within the area complaining about the access to reliable cell coverage. And with the new Hammond Creek School there, that's of concern to the city as well about 911 access and things like that, and calls for emergency services being more reliable as well to the city, since we still have employees that use that site. So the resolution before you authorizes this property right to be put out for auction, the easement. The auction will be set to occur in a few weeks based on the state law requirements, and the minimum bid will start at $4,800. The resolution also authorizes the mayor to execute any documents necessary to complete the transfer of the easement rights pending the outcome of the auction, which will be held here at City Hall. I'll be glad to answer any questions, or if Mr. Bledsoe, if I've missed any relevant facts, please chime in.
I do have a question about access with is there a gate there presently to access the property?
There's a gate close to this 800-foot mark because the first 800 feet or so are open pretty much at all times for folks to use the bike park, but it is gated. The old inert landfill, you can't get access to that because there's a gate there. So Verizon will basically be, in front of the gate, so to speak, or at the gate.
Okay. So they're not going to add a gate that would restrict our access for like emergency access to get to the bike?
They had
area.
discussed with the Public Works Director, Townsend, you may have to chime in on this, about potentially upgrading the gate, but I don't think that they're going to add a secondary gate. Is that correct?
The top part of this, they were looking at upgrading the current gate that is there
Mhm.
and then adding a gate to their parcel. Their parcel's already fenced. They would put a gate on their parcel getting to the cell tower location.
Okay, so that wouldn't restrict our access for
No.
emergency. Okay.
And this is a one-time payment?
This is a one-time payment. That's correct, because it's not a lease in the conventional sense of what we think is a lease. It's actually an easement, a driveway easement.
All right. Are there any other questions, comments? Not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve?
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. All right. Ethan, the next one. Item number 6, the first reading of ordinance 25-02 to amend Unified Zoning Ordinance of Whitfield County, Georgia, to provide an effective date to repeal all conflicting ordinances, to provide for severability and for other purposes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. The ordinance amendment is proposed specifically for commercial poultry production and would essentially change the unified ordinance as it stands for the unincorporated area in the county and increase their setbacks from 25 feet to 200 feet, as well as limit the number of houses per parcel of land at a maximum of 8 chicken houses, essentially, per parcel of land, up to 40 acres in size. Anything over that would have to be subdivided. So this is a very quick explanation about this ordinance. Essentially, little to no impact to the city of Dalton. And, but however, with any change to the unified zoning ordinance, it must be voted and approved by each governing body within the unified zoning ordinance. I'd be happy to answer any additional questions.
How has the planning commission and county commission ruled on this so far?
The planning commission's recommendation was essentially to approve it as it has been proposed. And, but also the planning commission did recommend, based on essentially an outcry at the public hearing from the public, to conduct additional research and potentially install additional measures for mitigation of the impacts for the chicken houses, essentially looking at greater setbacks or other limitations that may be put into place. But the planning commission recommendation ultimately was to approve it as it stands, since there is currently no law on the books to address this. And then maybe as well to consider looking into a moratorium, short moratorium of around 60 days for the commissioners to, again, revisit the studies that they may conduct to determine what additional measures could be added to this ordinance.
So this may not be the final ordinance.
It's possible that it may not be.
Inquiry. If the ordinance is changed in any substantive way between the first reading and when it's presented to us again, does that mean we have to start again from scratch, or what, how will we proceed, Mr. Attorney?
No, Councilmember Farrow, this is a first reading, so if it changes between the first and second, that's okay, as long as we've advertised the new one and presented it in public.
That's what I thought, but I just want to make sure. Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments of Ethan?
I just wanted to mention for the council's benefit, correct me if I'm wrong, but in the city, to construct a chicken house, you have to have a special use permit above and beyond having the correct zoning.
That is correct for the city of Arnell and the city of Dalton.
Okay.
Okay, so there'll be no action taken tonight as a first reading. Item number 7, first reading ordinance 25-03. The request of Elda Ramirez to rezone from rural residential R5 to general commercial C2, attractive land totaling 0.38 acres located at 436 South Glenwood Avenue, Dalton, Georgia, parcels 12-238-17-008 and parcel 12-238-17-007.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The rezoning before us is fairly straightforward based on the community that we see there, small pocket neighborhood. This rezoning was requested simply to change the residential character of the subject property from residential to commercial. And based on the petitioner's feedback and the public hearing, there's really no plan for this property as it stands. There's no intent to install an immediate business. There's no current design phase plan for a new development. We believe this was simply a marketing decision in order to sell the subject property for commercial use rather than residential. Looking at all the criteria, we saw no issues with only one consideration that I believe does need to have a little additional conversation. And the staff recommendation was to approve. Planning Commission recommendation was to approve. We heard no opposition. But after having additional conversation with city staff, I believe that if this is to be approved, that there needs to be an additional condition. And that condition should be something very simple as to ensure that any commercial occupation of the subject property would meet the minimum standards for parking as required in the Unified Zoning Ordinance. As it currently stands, there is no possible way, based on the square footage of the existing single-family homes on the subject property, that there would be any way to meet even a minimal parking standard in either of these two. And if they're not demolished, or if one of these is not demolished, or the whole site isn't redeveloped, someone were to be able to get a business permit, open a business in each one of those, it could create a significant issue there because there's no public parking, no on-street parking that's safe. And again, almost essentially no parking availability on the subject property. So that would be my only addition to the report from staff and from the Planning Commission.
Quick question, are the two houses occupied right now? Do you know?
Not to our understanding. We have not investigated to determine whether they have or have not been. Petitioner did not lead us to believe that they were.
Because wouldn't they would most likely lose their insurance if it goes from residential to commercial, right? Since it was a house. And if they switch it, they wouldn't.
I'm not sure about insurance and how that would be affected, depending on, I don't know how much zoning bothers insurance versus how it's actually used in the moment.
Okay.
I do know that certain mortgages that
Yeah.
can become an issue with insurance. I couldn't answer to that.
Okay.
All right.
There's something in the back of my mind that we dealt with this property a year or two ago, some form or fashion, city itself.
I think it was the two beside it, when we tore the houses up.
It was the properties to the north.
These two right here.
There were two single-family residences north of this subject tract that the city approved a demolition agreement on, and tore down the dangerous buildings.
Yeah, I knew it was somewhere in the neighborhood, yeah. This is the old Robertson house and a few of the small little homes around it.
If there is, as Mr. Calhoun said, if there is a desire to add that condition, that's something that we'll need to edit in the proposed ordinance because the ordinance was drafted based on the Planning Commission just adopting it as requested. So the draft ordinance in your packet this evening does not include that condition, but it is something that gives staff concern.
I would like to see that added before we have a second reading.
And,
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Next will be a first reading, item number 8. Item 25-04, the request of Juan Figuera to rezone from heavy manufacturing M2 to transitional residential R6, attractive land totaling 0.41 acres located at 909 Riverbend Road, Dalton, Georgia, parcel 12-255-03-030.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The rezoning here was simply a change from the fact that this area is, as you can see on the zoning map, heavily zoned for heavy manufacturing. And what we'll see, or what you may have seen if you looked at the staff report and the maps within that, is this area has tons of a mix of development. And you can see the converging zone districts. It would indicate a transitional area. And of course, the subject property is far too small for any type of heavy manufacturing. So the proposed the proposal was to rezone the subject property to R6 with the intent of the petitioner to build a triplex, a residential triplex on the subject property. We see quite a number of duplexes and other types of multifamily in this area, very near the subject property, and we see it adjacent to R5, which permits duplexes as well. So we see duplex and multifamily type development in this area, and don't believe it would cause any sort of concern with the character of the residential neighborhood or create any kind of an entering wedge or a spot zone in this particular case. So the staff recommendation was to approve, as well as the planning commission. Of course, with this being new construction, it would have to be built to meet any city code.
Any comments or questions of Ethan? Okay, if not, we'll move on to the first reading of item number 9, 25-05, the request of Juan Figueroa to rezone from heavy manufacturing M2 to rural residential R5, attractive land totaling 0.996 acres located at Water Street, Dalton, Georgia, parcel 12-218-06-039.
Madam Mayor, the rezoning here, very similar situation, only a little more consistent with the actual development of this area. As you can see, mostly residential, and we have this small unusual island of heavy manufacturing zoning within essentially a residential area. So this would help to reduce that island of manufacturing and bring it more into conformity both with the zoning and the land use of this area. Petitioner proposed around 5 new tracts of land to be created from the subject property, subject to the rezoning. And those 5 new tracts would contain a mixture of single-family detached dwellings and duplexes. So we didn't get an exact site plan to show what that mix would look like exactly, but it will be single-family and duplexes. And that, of course, the duplex is the maximum density permitted in the R5 zone district. There was no issue found by staff in this rezoning, and there were no opposition remarks heard during the public hearing. Planning Commission recommendation was approval.
Any questions or comments of Ethan on this one? Okay, if not, move on to the first reading, item number 10, 25-06, the request of Jason Jackson to rezone from transitional commercial C4 to central business district C3, attractive land totaling 0.34 acres located at 400 South Hamilton Street, Dalton, Georgia, parcel 12-238-21-002 and parcel 12-238-21-003.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A slightly different pattern here. We can see the downtown area and the request for the subject property to be rezoned from transitional commercial to central business district, which difference between those very simply is they allow essentially the same uses. The difference is that in the central business district, 0 lot lines are permitted outright, as well as no requirement for off-street parking in most all cases. Whereas the C4 zone district requires more traditional setbacks from the property line, as well as requiring off-street parking. So when we look at the request for the subject property, the petitioner's proposing to build an additional building on this property that would not be feasible under the current C4 transitional commercial zoning. But when you look at the zoning map, it's adjacent to the C3 zone district. We have seen the downtown C3, the central business district, move across the street to the south and expand. As you can see, a couple of lots over there to the west. And so we see this pattern happening and believe that overall, based on the comprehensive plan and the pattern for this area and the expansion of downtown, that this is a zoning that should be approved. The staff recommendation came with two conditions, and one of those we felt was necessary based on the type of use proposed by the subject property, which is automobile servicing and maintenance, that any automobiles that would be scheduled for repair would be stored on the subject property or other private property and not stowed in public parking while they're awaiting any type of servicing. Just in order, based on the fact that downtown's infrastructure has really not expanded into this area to create a lot of abundant on-street parking. So we want to make sure that we're not setting a precedent that's difficult to deal with. So for now, we've recommended that same condition with several other zones of similar character. Item B was, or condition B was just out of the sense that this is outside of the historic district of the downtown. But this was just something from staff's perspective and the comprehensive plan, the development and expansion of downtown to be consistent. And the majority of those adjacent buildings have masonry facade. And we felt that that would be something that would, continue to maintain the integrity of the downtown central business district character. Based on the public hearing, we didn't hear any opposition in the public hearing. However, the petitioner was not keen to the item B in regard to masonry, voiced no concern with condition A. And the Planning Commission recommendation was an approval with condition A regarding the off-street parking, whereas item B or condition B was not recommended by the Planning Commission.
Who would monitor condition A? Do you know?
Beg your pardon?
Like, who would monitor condition A to know if a car is being stored in the street or not?
That would be a joint effort of the police department and code enforcement.
Any other?
So if it was approved without B, for instance, put up some kind of a metal building without any kind of aesthetic quality at all?
That is absolutely correct, sir.
Isn't there a metal building there now? The garages that I drove past it today, they're already built and without any brick facade at all. In downtowns where we're seeing people want to do patio seating or they'll take over what was formerly a garage, turn it into a restaurant, and they'll put the roll-up doors. There are downtowns starting to have more and more of those, across the country. Would your all's position be the same if this was a restaurant? Doing that where you have these exposed, where you don't have the look of the building. You can clearly see it's an addition.
I think in general, having some sort of a design guideline for downtown would probably be beneficial to us in the future, just to keep from having to look at these things on a case-by-case basis for that exact reason, to be able to see a design. Not having a design, I think, was one of those concerns. After hearing the petitioner describe what he was building in the context of what is already there, I think it was less of a concern, and I believe that's why the Planning Commission recommendation was as it is.
Any other questions or comments? And again, this is a first reading, so there'll be no action taken on it tonight. Okay.
I would just note, Mayor, that the ordinance has been drafted with condition A, but not condition B. We typically draft the ordinance as consistent with how the Planning Commission approved it.
Okay. And just so we're clear, A is regarding parking.
Correct.
Nothing to do with this. Okay. Okay, item number 11, a first reading ordinance 25-07, the request of Preferred Tufters to rezone from heavy manufacturing M2 to rural residential R5, attractive land totaling 1.36 acres located on Carl Drive, Dalton, Georgia, parcel 12-255-10-0-017.
Madam Mayor, this rezoning, very similar to some of those previously we just discussed, where we have heavy manufacturing being requested to go to rural residential. Again, single-family detached dwellings and duplexes being the primary land uses in this zone district. And we can see the subject properties right at the point of convergence between the R5 and M2 zone district. And pretty much all of the uses that you see along the streets accessing the subject property are that of single-family or some form of low-scale multifamily duplexes, things of that nature. So the character of the rezoning fits very well with this neighborhood in this area. The comprehensive plan is in agreement with this rezoning, and we saw no issues to be concerned about. And of course, again, with this being new construction, anything, all the new lots to be created, as well as any new structures, would have to be built in compliance with all current city regulations and codes. Recommendation from staff was to approve. Recommendation from Planning Commission was to approve, and no opposition was heard.
All right, questions or comments of Ethan? If not, we'll move on to the last zoning item we have this evening, which is also a first reading. So item number 12, 25-08, the request of Don W. Adcock to rezone from limited commercial C1 to medium-density, single-family residential R3, attractive land totaling 0.18 acres located at 404 West Hawthorne Street, Dalton, Georgia, parcel 12-199-09-005.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The subject property is this is a fairly simple situation. It was originally built as a single-family detached dwelling, had been used as an office space for some time. The petitioners requested for it to be rezoned so that it can, again, be used for residential. Petitioner, during the conversation, during the public hearing, alluded to the fact that, basically they're changing from residential to commercial based on market demands, and there's no intent to sell the property or any other such plan. So staff recommendation from all along was to consider a limited commercial zoning, C1A. That zone district was created for the area not far from there along Thornton Avenue, where you have the convergence from commercial to residential, where you can have both very low-scale commercial office type uses and very limited retail, as well as the opportunity to have single-family residential or residential use. And in this case, that would grant both of those opportunities to the subject property without putting any sort of a burden on adjacent properties. And it would keep Planning Commission and Mayor and Council from having to rezone the subject property back and forth based on market demands. So that was the staff recommendation and reason for recommending the C1A limited commercial. Petitioner at the public hearing understood that and agreed that that would be a better option for them than their requested R3.
Okay, any questions or comments of Ethan? All right, if not, thanks, Ethan. We'll move on to item number 13. These are mayoral appointments. And Jonathan, can we do these all together? Or we can certainly do.
You
These
can
are-
if there's no disagreement.
And these are just mayoral, so
Right, so
these
they're-
don't require a vote.
Okay, so these are just stated for the purpose of the record?
Correct.
Okay. All right, for the Land Bank Authority, Dennis Mock and myself for 1 year for a term that would expire 12/31 of 2025. And Councilmember Farrow to continue in his position as liaison to the Historic Preservation Commission for a 1 year term that will expire 12/31 of 2025. These were left off our January meeting, so. Any comments or questions regarding the mayoral appointments? And again, these don't require a vote. All right, that takes us to supplemental business. Do not believe there is any before this this body. There are no announcements. Our next meeting will be Monday, March 17th. At this time, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.